Have you ever sat alone at your kitchen table sipping your coffee, wondering when your son or daughter last called, not out of obligation, but because they truly wanted to talk? Maybe you've noticed the conversations are shorter than they used to be. Maybe there are fewer visits, fewer updates, fewer moments where you feel like you're part of their world. And you start to wonder, not out of guilt or blame, but just as a quiet question in your heart. Did something change? Did I change? Are they pulling away? Or am I? The truth is, as we grow older, our roles in the family shift. We go from being the center of our children's universe to becoming a quieter presence in the background. And sometimes, without meaning to, we slowly step back, maybe to give them space, maybe because we're tired, or maybe because we just don't know where we fit anymore. But here's the thing. When your kids sense that you're not as emotionally present as you once were, they feel it. And they respond in ways that can either pull you closer or push you further apart. That's what this video is all about. We're going to talk about how your children react, subtly or not so subtly, when they feel you're losing interest in them or in the relationship. Not to make you feel bad, but to open a gentle window into their hearts. Because understanding how they react can help you reconnect in ways that matter most, not just for them, but for you too. Let's start with something that might feel familiar. You notice your child becomes oddly distant. They don't call as often. They stop sharing details about their life, what's going on at work, how the grandkids are doing, even simple things like what they cooked for dinner. It's not that they've cut you off completely, they still answer when you reach out. But the energy's different. It's cooler, more polite, less alive. This kind of distance isn't always intentional. In fact, it often comes from confusion. When a child feels their parent isn't as engaged as before, they might think they're being a burden. They might start assuming you don't want to hear about their day, or that you're too tired to deal with their problems. So rather than risk rejection, they pull back. It becomes a silent agreement. Unspoken, but real. I won't bother you if you don't want to be bothered. The problem is, neither side really wants the distance. They just don't know how to close it. Sometimes, instead of pulling away, they swing the other direction. They try harder. They check in more. They offer help you didn't ask for. They bring over groceries, mow your lawn, text you about every appointment you might have. At first it feels nice, like they care. And they do. But under the surface, what's really happening is this. They're trying to feel needed again. They sense you're fading a bit from the emotional spotlight, and it makes them anxious. So they overcompensate. Because if they feel you're drifting away, they'll do whatever they can to anchor themselves to you again. You might notice it in the tone of their voice. There's an urgency in their kindness, like they're trying to prove something. Do you need anything? I can come over. Want to get lunch this week? Want me to help with your phone again? It's not just love. It's fear. Fear of becoming invisible to you. And they're doing what they know best. Showing up, hoping that will reignite the warmth they used to feel from you. Then there's the more complicated reaction, frustration. You might hear it in their words or see it in their body language. They might start snapping more easily or making sharp comments like, "You never listen anymore," or "Why do you always act like you're too busy?" And you might be thinking, "Busy? I'm retired." But remember, frustration is rarely about the surface complaint. It's about the feeling underneath. And when a child senses you're no longer truly emotionally present, when they feel you're just going through the motions, it can feel like rejection. And that hurts. They may not have the words to say, "I miss feeling close to you," or "I wish you cared like you used to." So instead, it comes out as annoyance, irritation, even guilt-tripping. Not because they're trying to hurt you, but because they don't know how else to say they feel hurt themselves. And sometimes that emotion is rooted in childhood. Remember, to your kids, no matter how old they get, you're still mom or dad. And losing the connection to that role, even a little, can bring up a kind of sadness that's hard to express. Now here's something you may not expect. Sometimes your child will become more secretive. Not in a suspicious or rebellious way, but they'll simply stop telling you certain things. You might hear about big changes in their life weeks after they happened. You'll find out secondhand that they got a new job, moved to a new place, or made a major decision. At first, it might feel like they're leaving you out on purpose, but most of the time, it's not about disrespect. It's about emotional self-protection. When a child senses a parent is disengaging, even slightly, they may start to withhold, not out of spite, but out of uncertainty. What's the point of sharing if you don't really care? They wonder. And so they stop offering the full story. It's not an attack. It's a defense. And the longer it continues, the easier it becomes to let silence replace connection. But here's the good news. Every one of these reactions, even the frustrating ones, comes from a place of longing. Your kids want to feel close to you. They want to feel that your love didn't retire when you did, that your attention didn't fade as the years passed, that you still see them, not just as adults with their own lives, but as your children, still hoping to feel cherished, seen, and understood. Sometimes we think stepping back is the respectful thing to do. We don't want to meddle. We don't want to be the overbearing parent. But being present doesn't mean being pushy. It means being available, emotionally open, curious about their lives, willing to reach out, not just respond. That's the kind of presence that makes all the difference. If you've noticed some of these changes in your kids, maybe they've pulled back, or maybe they're trying too hard, it might be time to take a gentle look inward. Not with blame, but with compassion. Life gets busy even in retirement. Energy fades. Time slips by. But connection? That can always be renewed. You don't need to have deep conversations every day. You don't need to fix everything or know all the right words. Sometimes all it takes is a phone call that says, "I was thinking about you." A question like, "How are you doing, really?" Or simply letting them know, "I miss our time together." That's enough to shift the energy, to show them that no matter how old they get, they still matter to you. Because when your kids feel you're interested, that you're truly present, their reactions change. The distance fades. The awkwardness softens. And what's left is something powerful. A renewed relationship built not just on obligation or tradition, but on honest, heartfelt connection. And that's what we're really after, isn't it? It's a quiet kind of heartbreak when someone you love starts pulling away, and sometimes the silence is louder than words. You feel it in the gaps between text messages, in the empty chairs at the dinner table, in the quick goodbyes that used to linger a little longer. And as a parent, even one who's lived a full life, that kind of quiet can be hard to sit with. We left off talking about how your children might grow more distant, or even seem annoyed when they sense you're not as emotionally present as you once were. But there's another kind of reaction that doesn't come with cold shoulders or frustration. It comes wrapped in performance. Your child might suddenly become too perfect, always agreeing with you, always showing off their accomplishments, always trying to prove they're doing just fine. But behind that polished exterior, something deeper is going on. When a child feels you're drifting away, they might try to win your approval all over again. You'll notice it in how they talk, highlighting every success, brushing aside their struggles. They're not trying to brag. They're trying to reconnect the only way they know how, by showing you they're still worthy of your attention. And that says a lot about how deeply your presence matters to them, even if they don't always say it out loud. You may catch it when they send you articles they wrote, videos they made, or photos of the grandkids doing something impressive. It's their way of saying, "Look at me, Dad. Did I do good?" Or, "Mom, I still want to make you proud." If your child is leaning into this mode of achievement and perfection, it might not be because everything is fine. It might be because they're scared that without those wins, they'll lose what little attention they feel they still have from you. Now, not every reaction is about reaching outward. Sometimes your child reacts by turning inward. You might notice a sudden emotional wall, like they've shut the door to their feelings. You ask how they're doing and get one-word answers. You bring up an old memory and they brush it off. You sense a coolness in their tone, like they're trying not to feel too much, or at least not show it. This kind of withdrawal isn't indifference, it's protection. When someone feels rejected, even unintentionally, they may start suppressing their own needs to avoid further disappointment. And yes, even adult children do this with their parents. If they once looked to you for comfort or advice and no longer feel that emotional safety, they may decide, silently, "I'll just stop expecting anything." It's a self-preservation instinct, and unfortunately, it can turn a once close bond into something quiet, polite, and emotionally distant. But even that kind of withdrawal carries a message. Period. I used to feel connected to you. I miss that feeling, but I don't know how to get it back. And the truth is, most of the time, they don't need you to fix anything. They just want you to notice. To say, "Hey, you seem a little off. Are you okay?" Or even better, "I miss how we used to talk. I'd love to hear what's been going on with you." Sometimes when children don't get that kind of opening, they find it elsewhere. And that brings us to one of the hardest reactions to witness: replacement. Your child might start turning to other people for the connection they used to have with you. It could be a friend, a mentor, a neighbor, or even a therapist. And while it's healthy to have support systems, it can hurt when you feel like you're no longer the person they call when something big happens. You may not hear about the promotion until weeks later. Someone else may show up at their kid's soccer game instead of you. You might feel like a guest in their life rather than a central part of it. And it stings because deep down, you still want to matter. The thing is, most of the time, they're not pushing you away out of anger. They've just adapted to the emotional space they feel you've created. That doesn't mean they've stopped loving you. It just means they've learned to fill the gap. And that realization can be painful, but also motivating. Because the space can still be filled by you if you're willing to step back in. It might take effort. It might take vulnerability. You may have to admit that you've been tired, distracted, or unsure of how to reach out. But the moment you say, "I want us to be close again," you're doing something powerful. You're giving permission for closeness to return. You're reminding them that no one can ever fully replace a parent's love. And even if they've built other bonds, there's still a special place that only you can occupy. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, there's a reaction that can catch you completely off guard: silence. Complete, confusing, painful silence. Your calls go unanswered. Your texts are read but not replied to. Holidays come and go with no invitation or visit. At first, it might feel like they're just busy. But eventually, it becomes clear something has shifted. And the worst part? You're not sure why. When your child goes quiet, it's not always about punishment. Often, it's about pain. There may have been a moment, intentional or not, where they felt unseen, unheard, or unimportant. Maybe you said something that stung without realizing it. Maybe they reached out and didn't feel received. And rather than confront you, they chose silence. It's easier sometimes to disappear than to risk another rejection. Easier to create distance than to feel disappointed again. And for parents, this silence can feel like betrayal. But underneath it, there's usually a wound. And here's where you have a choice. You can let the silence grow, or you can take a small, brave step toward breaking it. Not with blame, not with demands, but with humility and love. A simple message like, "I miss you. I hope we can talk sometime soon," can open a door. Not always right away, and not always perfectly, but it plants the seed. And no matter how old your child gets, the desire to be seen, heard, and loved by a parent never really goes away. Sometimes it just goes underground for a while. And here's something else to keep in mind. Not all children react by pulling back. Some will start stepping up way too much. They'll begin caring for you, sometimes obsessively. They'll worry constantly about your health, your happiness, your daily routine. At first, it feels like love, and it is, but it's also anxiety. Because when they sense you're emotionally fading, they might try to save the connection by becoming the caretaker. They'll ask if you've eaten. They'll remind you about your appointments. They'll even try to fix your mood, saying things like, "Come on, cheer up," or "You should be doing more." And while the intention is pure, the root is often fear. Fear that they're losing you, not just physically, but emotionally. That the person who once felt like a rock in their life is now fading into the background. If you notice this happening, don't just wave it off. Thank them for caring. And then gently remind them that what you value most isn't their help, it's their heart. Tell them you appreciate the support, but you'd love to just sit and talk too. That you want a relationship built on more than reminders and routines. Because sometimes, what a child really wants isn't to take care of you. They want to feel like they still have you. And you're still here, still capable of showing up. Still full of love and wisdom and connection. Sometimes we forget that presence doesn't have to be big or grand. It just has to be real. It can be a 10-minute call, a shared cup of tea, a photo from an old album, a warm hand on their shoulder that says, "You'll always be my kid." You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the energy you used to. But your interest, your emotional availability, that still carries power. And it's never too late to use it. So much of what we call family isn't just blood or shared history, it's energy. The invisible threads that tie us together. And when your energy toward your children begins to fade, even just a little, they feel it. Whether they're 8 or 48, your presence still matters. And sometimes, the way they react to your absence, emotionally or physically, isn't always easy to spot. Let's talk about a reaction that's subtle, but can run deep. Overcompensation through independence. Your child might suddenly become overly self-reliant, brushing off your offers to help, no longer asking for your opinion, or keeping you out of big decisions entirely. It might sound like, "Don't worry about it, I've got it." Or, "You don't have to come, I know you're busy." On the surface, it seems like maturity. And yes, part of growing up is learning to stand on your own. But when this shift happens suddenly, and you sense it's coming with emotional distance, it may be their way of protecting themselves. They might think, "If you're not that interested in being part of my life anymore, I'll just stop asking." Or worse, "I'll stop hoping." And that can lead to years of missed moments, not because the love disappeared, but because neither side wanted to risk feeling unwanted. You see, independence is a beautiful thing when it's balanced. But when it's rooted in emotional retreat, it becomes a wall. And if you've noticed your child is living like you're no longer an emotional priority, never checking in, making plans without including you, rarely opening up, it might be time to ask yourself gently, have I shown them lately that I still want to be part of their world? Now sometimes the reaction isn't coldness or distance. It's a kind of emotional shrinking. Your child may become quieter, less expressive, less likely to disagree with you. They'll nod and smile, go along with things, even when they used to be more assertive. This isn't always about maturity or respect. It can be a sign that they feel unseen. That voicing their real thoughts or feelings doesn't matter anymore because, in their eyes, you've stopped really listening. They might think, "Why speak up if it won't change anything?" Or, "What's the point of sharing how I feel if they're not really there anymore?" And so they stop. They let the relationship become shallow, not because they want it that way, but because they think it's all that's left. And here's where you can do something powerful. Next time you notice your child just going along with something, agreeing too quickly, laughing too easily, pause and ask, "Is that really how you feel?" Then wait. Give them space. Because the moment they realize you're actually listening, that your interest is alive and well, is the moment they start to come back to you, not just physically, but emotionally. Now let's talk about one of the most confusing reactions of all: joy. Yes, joy. You might see your child out in the world smiling, thriving, full of life, and you wonder, do they even miss me? Do they notice I've pulled back? And this can be especially painful if you're feeling left behind. But here's the truth. Sometimes people shine brighter when they've had to process pain. Your child may have noticed your distance a long time ago. They may have grieved it quietly and made peace with the fact that your relationship isn't what it once was. So now they're living. They're finding joy where they can. Not to hurt you, but to heal themselves. And that can be hard to witness because you want to be part of that joy, not watching it from the outside. But here's something beautiful to remember. If they're still living, still growing, still shining, that means the door is still open. It means there's room for new memories, new conversations, a new chapter. All it takes is a moment of sincerity, a small step, a simple sentence like, period. I've missed being close to you. Can we start fresh? That's not weakness. That's courage. That's love. And if you're wondering, what if it's too late? I'll tell you this. As long as you're still breathing, as long as they are, it's never too late to reconnect. You don't need to fix the past. You just need to show up now, and the rest can begin to mend itself. You may be thinking, but what if they've already moved on without me? What if they're not interested anymore? That's a fear many parents carry. And yes, sometimes the road back to closeness takes time. But so often your child is waiting for you to make the first move, waiting for you to reach out, not with judgment or regret, but with open hands, to say, I know things have changed. I just want you to know I still care. That's the kind of honesty that melts walls. It doesn't always fix everything right away, but it begins something new. Remember this because it matters. Your attention still means everything to them. Even if they don't say it, even if they act indifferent, even if they've built a life that seems far removed from yours. That connection between parent and child doesn't dissolve with time, it just changes shape. And the more you nurture it, the more it returns to life. You don't have to talk every day. You don't have to know every detail of their life. You don't even have to agree on everything. What you do need is presence. A steady, open-hearted presence that says, I'm still here. I still care. I'm still interested in you. And let's be honest, it's not always easy. Getting older comes with its own challenges. Your energy might not be what it once was. You may feel like your world is shrinking while theirs is expanding. But here's the beauty. Interest doesn't require energy. It requires intention. Just showing up with curiosity, kindness, and a willingness to connect, that's enough. That's powerful. So if you've seen yourself in any of this, if your child has reacted with silence, overcompensation, perfectionism, or withdrawal, it's not too late to change the narrative. It's not too late to reach out. It's not too late to say, I miss you. And it's definitely not too late to feel close again. Because connection doesn't happen through grand gestures. It happens in the small moments. A shared memory, a warm laugh, a question asked with genuine care, and it starts with you. You've been the steady force in their life for decades, and even now, you still carry more influence than you realize. So pick up the phone, write that letter, send that photo from 1985 with a note that says, remember this? You were always my sunshine. Let them know that your interest didn't fade, it just got quiet. And now you're ready to turn the volume back up. Because no matter how old your child is, they still want to be seen by you. Not as someone to fix, not as someone to parent the way you used to, but simply as someone you still care about, someone who still matters to you. And that's a gift only you can give. Before we wrap up, I want to thank you for being here, for being open, for being willing to look inward and reflect on something so personal. If anything in this video spoke to you, I hope you'll leave a comment below. Tell us your story, whether it's a moment of reconnection, a challenge you're working through, or just a memory that resurfaced while watching this. Because this isn't just a video, it's a place for real stories, real people, and real healing. And if this helped you in any way, I'd be grateful if you liked the video, subscribed to our channel Strong Elderly Life, and shared it with someone who might need to hear these words. That one small act could help another parent just like you begin a new chapter with their child. Here's to the power of presence, to the beauty of second chances, and to living your best, most connected life at any age. You matter, and your love still matters, always.